Today we have Joel here to speak about his recent exhibition, Big Wide Land, at the Bunbury Regional Art Gallery. So thank you, Joel.
Hello, Amber.
So, Joel, I've got a question to start off with. The Big Wide Land is your most recent exhibition at Bragg, which comprises of large pastel drawings sketched on location and then completed in your studio in Binningup. What drew you to make art about these particular West Australian landscapes?
Well, it started when I was an arts advisory teacher in the Kimberley in the 80s. And I used to drive around to all the government and non-government schools in the Kimberley, and I would take kids outside of the classroom with pastels and paper and boards, and we would draw things out from the landscape. And I enjoyed doing that, and so I started to take good quality paper with me so that when I may have been at a place for a weekend or something, I would go looking for particular images to draw. And so through that 3 years, I built up a collection of those drawings and did show them. We sold some. And then when we moved back to Perth, 6 years later, I started to go out to places around Western Australia doing the same thing, looking for interesting things to draw. And I dragged my wife along with me, and she was very tolerant. So I built up a collection of these pastel drawings, and I used to show them in exhibitions along with my ceramics. And I had the presence of mind to get them scanned as I was doing them. And so I built up a collection of images from around Western Australia and called that series the Way Out West series and produced a book of them. And we had those at the exhibition recently. So they were small size drawings, and I had to get them that size so they could fit in the folio I had when I took it out to all these places. And then I thought I really should look at doing pastels twice the size of these. So these were Arches paper, A1 size. And so they're bigger and harder. And so I just developed it from there. And each time there was a holiday that we weren't doing something else, or I wasn't working towards a ceramics exhibition, we'd go off to these places and seek out interesting images. So that's what it was all about for me, producing something that was interesting.
Your drawing technique is incredibly unique. And what has influenced and shaped your drawing practice? I know a lot of the viewers come in through the gallery and they've just been kind of blown away by your specialised technique of drawing. What has influenced you?
Yeah, that's a good question. The ones I did from the Way Out West series were generally straightforward because they were relatively small pieces of paper. But with the larger ones, I would do the drawings out on location, take a photograph, and then I'd bring them back to the studio. And then I would refer to the photograph to put detail in, because I thought if I'm going to try and sell a large pastel drawing, it needs to have some substance to it. And so I have done that. I've referred to the photographs, and there's a lot of line work. In fact, when I posted some of the drawings to Facebook, I had people say, "Don't add the colour, leave it like that." but I was working towards an exhibition of coloured pastels, and so it really was a case of just colouring in after I'd done the drawing. So that's where it came from.
And there's a lot of, I feel like when people are looking at your drawings, the composition and the patterns and the repetition of patterns, that's something also very characteristic of the drawings in Big Wide Land. And people's comments saying that it's kind of like an X-ray vision of the landscape. Is that, are they kind of intended qualities of the work, or?
Well, that's an interesting idea, because when they say X-ray, they're talking about the Aboriginal drawings of barramundi and other animals where they show the internal organs. And I did actually work for 6 years in an Aboriginal art centre. I set it up and managed it for 6 years. And so I guess I imbued a lot of the drawing techniques and ideas that the Aboriginal artists were using. So that may be where it's come from. I'm not sure. But I guess for me, it's been to try and produce something that would stop people in their tracks. I'd make them stop and look, and then look again, and then again. And so that's really what it's about for me, is to try and put as much interesting information in there as possible without it being overwhelming.
Awesome. And during your exhibition, you're an artist in residence at the gallery. How did you find this experience?
Well, that was a really pleasant thing to do, because what artists always like, of course, is people saying nice things about them. And so so I was working in the room opposite the exhibition, and people would either come in and I'd show them what stage I was at on the drawing I was working on then, or I would go into the exhibition and talk to people and hand them out the brochure, and also we printed a double-sided piece of paper with narratives about each of the places where the drawings were done. And so I thought that might add to the interest of the show.
Is there a particular work in the exhibition that's your favourite, or a particular location that kind of is your favourite to keep going back to?
Now that's a hard question. Hard question. I would probably say Bell Gorge, but that's partly because I was born and raised in the Kimberley, and Bell Gorge is in the Kimberley, and it's a really great place to go swimming, because the waterfall that you see in the picture drops down to a very big pool below, and then there's sand and flat rock you can sit on, and it's just a great place to swim in. So it's probably my favourite gorge in the Kimberley.
And we're in self-isolation at the moment. Are you working on anything particular? Have you got any things coming up that you're working on in your studio?
I'm certainly working on a drawing which I've been working on for a while now. It's called Snag Island Pier at Lehman. And again, it's one that I drew out on location. Yeah. And then I've drawn most of it. I'm just finishing off all the detail in the foreground, and that's been really, really difficult to do, because I have only got a small photograph to work from, because I took the photograph before there was digital photography. Yeah. So it goes back a bit. So that's been hard, only because of that. I've had to actually use a magnifying glass to get into the detail in some of it.
Has the self-isolation kind of changed any of your daily routines or impacted you in a big way, or is it kind of just because you work at home in your studio, it's kind of been quite familiar?
Yeah, it's sort of business as usual, except we live in Biddinut, which is a small community, and so we're not seeing too many other people on a consistent basis. But otherwise, it's been business as usual. I go for my walk along the beach and back through the village each evening after drawing. So I've just kept up my routine.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Joel, for joining us today. It's great to hear from you in your home. And you mentioned at the start of the conversation, what was the work that you have behind you?
Graham Page's Oliver's drawing. He did a series of pen drawings up on a trip up to the Ashburton and places like that. And he bought one of my pastels, and so I bought one of his drawings. So I'd be keen to tell him that his drawing's been featured.
It's been great to see when we're interviewing artists, to see the different works they have in the background and in their houses. So that's also a special bonus. So thank you, Joel, for joining us today.
Thanks, Amber.